Diane Keaton and Al Pacino were introduced to the world as Michael and Kay, but behind the glow of studio lights lived a bond that was far more tangled, tender, and enduring than audiences ever knew. For decades, fans watched them grow older on screen, still believing that somewhere beneath the roles was a love story that never ended. When Diane passed away in October 2025, the world mourned an actress who defined wit, courage, and charm. Yet those closest to her understood that one chapter of her life remained unfinished. Al Pacino felt that silence more than anyone. After 50 years of friendship and 18 years of an on-again, off-again romance, he had become the quiet keeper of memories only the two of them shared. Their story began in 1971 on the set of The Godfather, where Diane later admitted she fell madly in love, but the truth of what he felt was always left unspoken. Until now. After losing her, Pacino finally broke the silence. What he revealed stunned even those who believed they already knew everything about the most whispered Hollywood love story of their generation. When Diane Keaton walked into her first rehearsal for The Godfather in 1971, she was still an actress searching for her place in Hollywood. She carried a sense of playfulness that made rooms feel brighter, yet she also carried a quiet vulnerability that only the observant ever noticed. Al Pacino at that same moment was a young actor consumed by the work, shaping the early pieces of a career that would push him into the center of American cinema. Their personalities could not have been more different, yet the contrast between them created a spark that neither expected. They were two rising stars sharing long rehearsal days, both unaware that a single film would change not only their careers but the direction of their lives. Francis Ford Coppola often paired them together during early blocking sessions, and those who watched from a distance sensed an energy building before either performer acknowledged it themselves. Keaton later described Pacino as electric, someone who carried an intensity she had never seen in another actor. Pacino found himself drawn to her warmth, to the way she softened the edges of every scene. On screen, their characters were written to fall in love, but behind the camera, the connection grew long before the script required it. What began as curiosity quietly deepened into affection, and by the time cameras rolled, their bond was already forming its roots. The two of them spent hours between takes walking the Paramount lot, learning each other's rhythms, a blend of her easy humor and his thoughtful silence. Keaton brought out a lighter side of Pacino, one rarely shown publicly. He grounded her, offering a steadiness that she often craved during her early years in the industry. They were not a perfectly aligned pair, still they fit in a way neither expected. That contrast, the sharp differences in their inner worlds, created both the chemistry people noticed and the complexity that would later define their relationship. As the production moved forward, the connection between them became impossible to ignore. The famous wedding scene, filmed under an unforgiving sun, required multiple takes, and every time the camera stopped, they lingered near each other. Not in a dramatic way, simply in a quiet one, as though each found an ease they did not fully understand, but were reluctant to let go of. By the time the film premiered in 1972, their romance was already underway, even if only a small circle of friends truly knew its depth. The success of The Godfather thrust them into a new orbit. Pacino became a cultural force, Keaton became one of the most promising actresses of her generation, and the pressure of fame only tightened the bond that had begun in those early rehearsals. Their relationship, still private, became a refuge from the rising noise around them. When schedules became overwhelming, they returned to the familiarity that started it all, a reminder of a time when they were simply two young actors discovering themselves. Yet even in those early years, there were hints of the tension that would later test them. Pacino was consumed by performance and the need to perfect every role. Keaton was more searching, longing for emotional closeness that did not always match his way of moving through the world. They loved each other, but they loved in different languages, and neither quite knew how to translate their needs for the other. Still, the affection between them never faltered. It grew in uneven lines, sometimes tender, sometimes complicated. but always unmistakably real. By the late 70s, their romance had already begun its on and off rhythm, a pattern shaped by ambition, distance, and the very differences that had drawn them together years earlier. Yet the fundamental truth remained. Even then, Diane Keaton had fallen deeply in love, and Pacino, guarded yet drawn to her, never fully let go. Their early bond set the stage for the 18 years that followed, a love story marked by intensity, conflict, and devotion that neither of them could outrun. Only one question remained, even in those opening years. If the connection was so powerful, why would it become the most beautifully difficult relationship either of them ever experienced? That answer would unfold in the years ahead, carrying them into the unpredictable rhythm that defined their time together. As the 70s unfolded, Diane Keaton and Al Pacino entered a rhythm that would define nearly 2 decades of their lives. Their relationship was never quiet, never stable, never easy, yet it carried a pull that kept drawing them back to one another. Both were rising at astonishing speed. Keaton became an Academy Award winner in 1978. Pacino delivered a series of performances that shaped modern American film, and the demands on each of them intensified. Success built walls around their schedules, but it also built expectations neither fully knew how to navigate. Even so, their connection remained a constant, a private thread tying them together as the world watched their careers soar. Their romance moved through phases of closeness and distance. Some breaks lasted weeks, others months, yet the pattern was always the same. They separated, tried to move on, then found themselves pulled back into a bond that refused to dissolve. Friends noticed how they softened around each other. Pacino, often serious and introspective, became gentler in her presence. Keaton, who could be self-critical, found calm when he was near. The contrast between them that began on the Godfather set had evolved into a complex emotional dance that neither fully controlled. During the filming of The Godfather Part 2 in 1974, the relationship deepened further. They were older, more seasoned, carrying the weight of fame yet still discovering who they were becoming. Keaton later shared that she admired Pacino's dedication, even when that dedication created distance. He could disappear into a role, lose himself in preparation, and return only when the work allowed. She understood the demands of the craft, but she also felt the ache of wanting more time, more consistency, more partnership than he was often able to give. It was never a lack of love. It was the difficulty of two people living at different emotional speeds. By the time The Godfather Part 3 filmed in 1989, they were no longer the young actors who had fallen for each other in a rehearsal room. They were two people with history behind them, carrying the marks of every reunion and every separation. Their scenes together held a tenderness that came not from performance but from familiarity. They had walked beside one another through seasons of triumph and quiet heartbreak, holding space as each other's most trusted confidant. What grew between them wasn't defined by titles or boundaries. It simply existed, steady and unshakable. Yet even a bond that deep carries its own quiet burdens. Pacino's career remained a force that demanded long hours, deep focus, and emotional distance from everything outside the work. Keaton longed for stability he could not offer. She was ready to build a life that included commitment, something permanent. Pacino cared deeply for her, but the idea of marriage felt like a boundary he could not cross. The tension between them grew slowly, almost quietly, until it became the truth they could no longer avoid. The relationship's on and off nature wore at them. Each return brought hope. Each separation added another layer of sadness. They loved each other fiercely, yet they loved within the limits of their individual worlds. Keaton later described their connection as something powerful but uneven, rooted in affection but challenged by timing and temperament. She never questioned the authenticity of what existed between them, only the impossibility of shaping it into a future that would satisfy them both. By 1990, the relationship reached its breaking point. Keaton wanted clarity, something concrete after years of uncertainty. Pacino, still unable to meet her need for commitment, pulled away. They ended the romantic chapter of their lives with respect, but also with the kind of sorrow that comes only from losing someone who shaped who you became. By the late 1980s, Diane Keaton and Al Pacino had been entwined in an on and off relationship for nearly 2 decades. Their love had endured the demands of fame, the stress of rigorous film schedules, and the pressures of being two of Hollywood's most admired actors. Yet beneath the laughter and shared memories lay a tension neither could ignore. Their differences, once a source of attraction, had become obstacles too large to bridge. Pacino's devotion to his craft consumed much of his attention, while Keaton longed for a stability and commitment that he could not offer. The very traits that had drawn them together now highlighted the distance between them. In 1990, that distance reached a defining moment. Diane, after years of uncertainty, issued Pacino an ultimatum. She wanted to solidify their bond, to step into a shared future that reflected the depth of what they felt for each other. Pacino, honest and steadfast in his own way, could not give her what she asked. Marriage was not a path he could walk at that time, and he stepped back from a commitment she desired. The decision ended their romantic relationship, leaving both with a mixture of sorrow, respect, and reflection. It was not a rupture born of cruelty, but a choice shaped by circumstance, timing, and their individual needs. The heartbreak was profound yet quiet. Diane later reflected that stepping away from a potential marriage was ultimately a relief for both of them. She recognized that their eccentricities and personal differences might have made a formal union unsustainable, a nightmare that neither would have navigated well. Pacino, for his part, carried a lingering ache, the awareness that he had loved someone deeply and had let an opportunity for permanence slip through his hands. Friends close to him have since said that Diane remained the love of his life, an enduring presence in his memories even as they walked separate paths. Even as they separated romantically, the foundation of their bond remained. Their connection did not vanish. It transformed. Letters, phone calls, shared moments at mutual friends' gatherings, and private conversations allowed them to maintain a closeness beyond what many understood. They were confidants, allies, and reminders to each other of a time when love had been both intense and tentative. The years that followed did not erase what they had built, and each encounter carried echoes of their shared past. Though the ache of the breakup lingered, it was interwoven with care, respect, and enduring affection. Their breakup also marked a turning point in how they defined love and connection. It taught them that profound relationships do not always follow conventional paths, that devotion can exist without permanence, and that intimacy is not limited to romantic labels. Pacino and Keaton both carried forward lessons from their 18-year journey, applying those truths to their friendships, their parenting, and the way they engaged with the world. Their story became a testament to the ways love can endure even when it cannot be contained within a marriage or traditional commitment. By the time the 1990s progressed, their bond had evolved into one defined less by passion and more by enduring care. Each had grown, learned, and navigated the complicated terrain of adult life, yet the imprint of their shared years remained vivid. They had experienced the fullness of love, joy, laughter, longing, and ultimately loss. Even in separation, the emotional resonance of their connection shaped who they were and how they moved through the world. The breakup answered one question but opened another. If they could maintain such closeness after the end of their romance, how deep and lasting was the influence they had on one another? That question would find its answer in the decades that followed, as both continued to honor the bond they shared, culminating in moments of reflection, admiration, and eventually, public acknowledgement that revealed truths the world had long speculated about. After their romantic relationship ended in 1990, Diane Keaton and Al Pacino continued to share a bond that many could not understand. The world had witnessed the fire of their on-again, off-again romance, but few appreciated the depth of respect, admiration, and loyalty that endured long after passion had faded. Neither married, yet both built lives filled with love in different forms. Keaton adopted 2 children in her 50s, creating a family grounded in her values and warmth. Pacino became a father to 4 children from other relationships, carrying the lessons of past love into the quiet spaces of parenthood. Their lives unfolded separately, yet their connection remained a constant undercurrent. Pacino often spoke of Keaton publicly, most memorably at her American Film Institute Lifetime Achievement Award in 2017. On that night, he looked across the room and told her, "I love you forever," a statement that carried the weight of decades. It was not a flourish for cameras. It was a truth born of years of shared triumphs, heartbreaks, and mutual understanding. For Pacino, Keaton had been the love of his life, someone who influenced not only his performances but his view of intimacy, friendship, and human connection. The admiration he expressed was a testament to the enduring impact she had on him, shaping his choices and reflections long after their romantic chapter had closed. The two navigated Hollywood as kindred spirits in a world that often demanded performance both on and off the screen. Their friendship was deeply personal, yet lived publicly in subtle ways. A comment in an interview, a shared anecdote, a presence at an award ceremony. They trusted one another, confided in one another, and honored the bond that had once been romantic without ever attempting to relive it. In doing so, they demonstrated a rare form of love, one that evolves, adapts, and persists even when the conventional markers of a relationship, marriage, cohabitation, formal commitments, are absent. Regret, too, became a quiet companion for Pacino. Sources close to him later indicated that he considered Keaton the love of his life, and sometimes wished the course of their relationship had allowed for marriage. Yet even within that longing, there was an acknowledgement of why their paths had diverged. Their differences, which had once attracted, would have made life together complex, perhaps unbearable. The regret was tempered with understanding, and with it came a reverence for what had been shared. Love in this form was not diminished by separation. It was refined, clarified by decades of experience and reflection. For Keaton, the friendship offered continuity and stability. She could rely on Pacino's honesty, his insight, and his enduring loyalty. They were witnesses to each other's lives, participants in successes, confidants in failures, and partners in navigating the turbulence of Hollywood and personal growth. The intimacy they maintained was rare, a connection that blurred the line between family, friendship, and the love that had once defined them. In every gesture, every shared memory, they honored a relationship that was timeless in its influence. By the mid-2010s, their enduring connection had become a part of Hollywood's quietly documented history, a story of love not limited to romantic labels. They showed that some bonds are so profound they survive heartbreak, career pressures, and the passage of time. That understanding would culminate in one of the most emotionally charged moments of Pacino's later life, a moment that would answer the lingering question the world had long speculated about: what he truly felt for Diane Keaton. Beyond admiration, beyond respect, beyond friendship, that revelation, finally voiced after her passing, would bring the story full circle, bridging decades of affection, loss, and devotion. October 2025 arrived with a quiet grief that swept through the film world. Diane Keaton, the actress whose humor, intelligence, and singular presence had shaped generations of cinema, passed away at the age of 79. Tributes poured in from every corner, co-stars, directors, critics, and fans. But for Al Pacino, the loss carried a personal weight that no press release could capture. For decades, their story had been whispered about in Hollywood circles, a romance both intense and complicated, spanning nearly 18 years from their meeting on The Godfather, set in 1971, until their final breakup in 1990. Now, in the stillness left by her passing, Pacino broke the silence that had endured for more than half a century. He confirmed what many had speculated, but few knew with certainty: Diane Keaton had been the love of his life. In statements following her death, he spoke with a tenderness that startled even those closest to him. Their love had never been simple, never defined by permanence, yet it had been profound and unshakable. Pacino acknowledged the regrets he had carried quietly for decades. Moments when he wished he had accepted Diane's ultimatum. Moments when he realized how deeply she had shaped his life, both personally and professionally. He described their bond not as a fleeting affair or Hollywood gossip, but as an enduring connection that had influenced the way he loved, the way he worked, and the way he carried himself in the world. Pacino's acknowledgement did not sensationalize their romance. It honored it. He spoke of the laughter they shared, the silent moments of understanding, and the support they had given each other through triumphs and heartbreaks alike. The world had seen them as icons, colleagues, and friends. Yet only in his words did the full emotional truth emerge. He admitted that the on-again, off-again pattern of their relationship had tested them, but it had never diminished the depth of his admiration for her. In public and in private, he had never stopped caring, never stopped recognizing the extraordinary person she had been, and the extraordinary partner she had been for him. In reflecting on Diane's passing, Pacino described a mixture of sorrow and gratitude. Sorrow for the absence of someone who had been constant in his life, and gratitude for the decades they had shared, for the love that had transformed into friendship, and for the lessons of patience, resilience, and devotion that remained etched in his heart. He spoke of the paradox of their relationship, romance that ended in separation yet blossomed into lifelong respect and intimacy that few could claim to have experienced. The narrative of their love, once private and speculative, had finally been affirmed with clarity and emotional honesty. The confirmation also offered closure to the story the world had long speculated about. Al Pacino's words transformed decades of whispers into a truth that was at once simple and profound. Diane Keaton had been the love of his life, his partner in growth, and his enduring inspiration. By acknowledging it openly, he honored both her memory and the years they had shared, showing that love does not always require permanence to leave an indelible mark. Finally, after years of private reflection and public discretion, Pacino's confirmation bridged the past and the present. It celebrated a connection that transcended time, heartbreak, and Hollywood's relentless scrutiny. Their story, marked by passion, challenge, and unwavering respect, concluded not with speculation or rumor but with truth. In the aftermath of Diane Keaton's death, the world understood the depth of a love that had quietly endured, leaving behind a legacy of devotion, admiration, and emotional resonance that would last far beyond their lifetimes. Diane Keaton and Al Pacino shared a bond that few could ever fully understand. A love that began amid the chaos of a film set, endured the turbulence of Hollywood, and transformed into a friendship defined by respect, admiration, and loyalty. Their story was never conventional. It was a love measured not by marriage or permanence, but by the depth of presence, the constancy of care, and the echoes of shared moments that lasted decades. Pacino's acknowledgement after Diane's passing in October 2025 brought clarity to a relationship that had long been whispered about, confirming what those closest to them had always known. She had been the love of his life. In reflecting on their years together, we see a truth about love that is both tender and profound. Love is not always possession or formality. Sometimes it is enduring devotion, a quiet presence, and the courage to hold someone in your heart even when life pulls you apart. Diane Keaton shaped Al Pacino's life, and he in turn carried her influence through every chapter that followed. Their story, now complete in public acknowledgement, leaves behind a legacy of devotion, intimacy, and emotional honesty. For more emotional stories, check out this video.